Hey, listeners, are you getting inspired to dive deeper into your learning of EFFT? If so, head on over to Catherine's website to check out her list of upcoming trainings. Some trainings are focused on combining EFFT with young kids and EFFT play therapy. So head on over to her website and we hope to see you in the future. Check it out at KATHRYNDEBRUIN.com, CatherineDeBruin.com, and we hope to see you in the future.
Welcome to the Family Express podcast, where our destination is resilient and connected families. Come aboard with your hosts, marriage and family therapists Catherine DeBruin and Rhonda Evans, to explore the world of emotionally focused family therapy, a model developed by Sue Johnson and colleagues. Together with our guest speakers, our travels will map the EFFT landscape, highlighting lessons learned, shared fears, and the passion and curiosity that bonds our community.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Family Express podcast with Catherine DeBruin and Rhonda Evans. We have an amazing guest here with us today. It's going to take me a little bit of a minute to introduce our guest. We welcome today Kade Sharp. Kade uses he, they pronouns. And Kade, I get the honor of letting all of our listeners know about the amazing collection and wisdom and knowledge that you bring to us and your certifications and credentials. So let's hear it. You have a PhD in clinical sexology. You're a licensed independent clinical social worker. You're a registered play therapist and supervisor. You're a child mental health specialist. And you're an ASECT and MSTI certified sex therapist. And you are autistic yourself, and you're an autistic provider. So, Kade, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you both for having me. I think this is a great time in our world to be talking about how to support autistic youth and how to help them figure it out.
That's fantastic. That's definitely where Catherine and I have some curiosities, and we want to learn for ourselves as well. And we hope this conversation will help us and also help our listeners on the really important topic of how do you bring up and broach the potential, the conversation that someone that you're working with, a client or a family member, may have autism based on your understanding and knowledge of that and what you're observing. So thank you so much. We're really excited to learn from you and with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And often in our role, we're some of the first people to notice, So I think it's important that we do know what are we looking for.
And Kade, how likely are we to run into something like this in a family session? Like, what's the prevalence? Can you walk us through some of the latest stats, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. In the United States, we are seeing that it's about 1 in 36 youth who are autistic, and that's just diagnosed. So it goes very, very underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed, especially for our people of color, for women, for anyone who doesn't kind of match our society's norms. So highly likely you'll be seeing them in therapy. You just may not know they're autistic. They may not know they're autistic. Yeah.
And maybe this is a little controversial, but why now? Why are these stats so front and center now? Has this always been the case, or what's your understanding of what's happening in our world?
Yeah, the stats have not always been as refined as they are currently, even though it looks like perhaps they could be refined further. I think one of the big things that has helped is that there's a lot more autistic advocacy. So actually autistic folks talking about their experiences. Whereas if we look at research from like 2015 or earlier, it is primarily non-autistic researchers talking to teachers, parents, guardians, not the autistic folks themselves. So
I have to say that even in my personal world, I have a number of friends who are my age and even older who have gotten diagnosed in the last year or two. And it seems like it's been quite mind-blowing for them to suddenly put some understanding to things they've experienced their whole lives but never knew about.
Yeah. I think it's very common that adults are kind of looking at their life and going, there are some things that just I feel don't add up or have gone unexplained, or the explanation I was given doesn't feel quite right. And they go to explore, what could that be? And then they find out with this new information of what the autistic narrative can be and what it means to be autistic, that perhaps that actually fits and suits them better and their experience is better. Yeah. I think from a therapist lens too, maybe you both are aware, but pre-2013, our DSM said you cannot diagnose someone as both an ADHDer and autistic. So anyone who received an ADHD diagnosis before then was not even considered to also be autistic. And what we now know is that there's about an 80% chance of those things co-occurring. So if you are an ADHDer, you might want to look into whether or not you're autistic because it's so commonly seen together.
Wow. So speaking,
mind-blowing that it's so high. That it's mind-blowing that it's so high.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it really is such a spectrum, even of neurodiversity, atypical. Like, is there even anything typical, or is everything just like what is neurotypical these days anyway? Right? Like, what do you think of these categories?
I take a page from Dr. Nick Walker, who wrote Neuroqueer Heresies and is like an autistic scholar, an academic, and the folks who are researching this stuff and looking at it philosophically, that neurotypical is not actually a neurotype. There is no human who has the exact quote unquote perfect standard brain. Instead, neurotypical is more of a norm. If you fit these things and your neurotype allows you to pass as neurotypical, then you meet that standard. So the more neurodivergence that is going on, many people are multiply neurodivergent. So like the ADHDers and autistic folks where they're ADHD, those folks have a much harder time meeting those neurotypical norms and standards without really burning out or hurting themselves.
Yeah.
Right. It's really taxing, the masking that's required to kind of fit into that fit. I'll do air quotes, fit.
Yes, absolutely.
So what are some of those standards, and in other words, helping the family therapist or the parent? What are the kinds of things that we might be seeing in our offices that could clue us into the need for some screening or assessment?
I like to look at it through what I call like the 5S framework. So if you look at the DSM criteria, it gives us about 5 categories that we're looking for. One of those in criterion A is required. So you're not autistic if you don't meet this one. And the requirement there is around social differences. The DSM calls it social deficits, but we'll talk strengths-based social differences. So we're looking for folks who maybe the body language isn't always what you would expect of a neurotypical person, someone who can meet those norms and standards. Maybe they don't like much eye contact. Maybe as you're talking in therapy about whether it's school, whether it's trauma, whether it's something they love, their gaze is always slightly off to one area of the room or constantly moving. It could also be the way that they talk. Listeners will probably notice I have what we call the autistic accent when I'm not masking. So lots of filler words, lots of breaths where they shouldn't be, lots of half sentences, run-on sentences, rabbit trails. If we all really get going, I'll be like, let me tell you about this other thing because it is related. And then I tie it back around. So one way that an autistic person can show up is in that way of interesting speech patterns and the way that we talk. On the flip side, the kind of stereotype of an autistic person is that we are supposed to be monotonous and answer in 1 to 2 words and be very direct and straightforward. Both are true of autistic folks. You can present in one way or the other ways. It can also flip depending on your mood, the sensory stimuli in the environment, which makes it hard as the therapist to know, like, well, which one am I looking? You're looking for both. What you're looking for, because what autism is at its core, is a hyper and hypo connected brain. So when they've done brain scans, they've seen that autistic folks are not hyper and hypo connected in the same ways. Our synaptic pruning is different than non-autistic folks. We tend not to have as many synapses pruned. So sometimes we are hyper connected let's say in sensory ways, where I can hear all of the lights in this room right now and the little mini fridge over in the corner, and it will never go away. It will never turn into background noise. I will always consciously be processing that in addition to what we're talking about. But I would guess I am hypoconnected in a math way because I am not good with numbers. If you think back to the old stereotype of Rain Man, I cannot do equations on a chalkboard. However, someone else might be very skilled with math and sensory. They need more input. They need you all to turn your volume up and yell for them to feel regulated. So we're looking for the hyper and hypoconnectedness.
Wow. Okay. So let's just recap. You said there's a 5S framework.
Yep. And we've covered one. We've covered social.
We've covered social differences. And under social differences, we're looking for that hyper or hypo-connected speech patterns, eye contact, sensory. What are you tending to and kind of actively processing in the moment? That's one of the 5.
Yeah, that's one of the 5.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so we can go right into the sensory piece because it's a very common one for autistic folks. So in session, if you notice somebody constantly jiggling their legs, even when they're not talking about anything anxiety-inducing, that could be someone needing that extra sensory input. If you've got somebody who is who comes in and a kid maybe turns off the lamps or comes in and covers themselves with a blanket or grabs one of like your weighted toys. Or if you don't have a weighted toy, maybe they're literally like pulling the coffee table on top of themselves to get that extra pressure. Any of those things could be sensory seeking or sensory aversion and avoidance. And that is more common for autistic folks to do. From their guardians, you might hear them say, I can't get them to take showers, or I can't get them to wear socks with seams or clothes with tags, or if they touch our velvet couch at home, they literally cry. I can't get them to sit on it for a family photo. You know, anything around sensory stuff. Other really common ones are around food. They always want spicy Takis for snacks, and I can't get them to eat oatmeal. Or on the flip side, they only want mac and cheese, no seasonings on their chicken nuggets, like very bland foods because they're avoiding that spice or sourness. I find that
okay.
Yeah. And so that's the sensory category. And for these, so social must be met. For the other 4, you only need 2 out of 4.
Okay.
But most autistic folks I meet are there for all 4 out of 4, if not just 3 out of 4. So that sensory piece is pretty noticeable, which then leads us into the criteria around what we call stimming in the autistic community. In the DSM, it's called self-stimulatory behaviors. So those things that we do that are repetitive that help us regulate. With kids, you'll notice it pretty fast because they will be maybe doodling or drawing the entire session, or they'll be grabbing all your fidget toys and just constantly fidgeting, or they'll be jumping up and down, or they'll talk with their hands a lot. Anything where there's a lot of movement, or they might repeat the same words to you over and over, or sing the same like little chorus of a song and it just seems stuck in their head. The hard part is when kids get told don't do that, and then they start to internalize and find other ways to stim that are not so noticeable. They start to kind of what we call mask or camouflage their autistic traits. When they start internalizing it, it almost can sound like OCD, like ruminating on the same types of thoughts or counting things in their head, but it's soothing to them instead of distressing like it could be for someone who's got OCD.
Oh.
An important distinction. Thank you.
Yeah. And I believe the overlap of autistic folks with OCD is about 16% have both. So,
okay.
Yeah. So if you're working with a client who comes in and is already diagnosed with ADHD or OCD, you might be working with an autistic client. If you're working with someone who is depressed with, or who is diagnosed with depression or anxiety, especially the moderate to severe, that tends to be autistic folks as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of things statistically we're more likely to be or have.
Sure. Yeah. So help me understand the difference between like the sensory of like shaking the leg when talking about something that's not anxiety inducing versus stimming. Like they're actually technically in two different categories. I'm using air quotes here, like they're technically two different categories of symptoms.
The example of shaking the leg kind of meets both needs. So sensory, they need that extra proprioception or pressure that it gives when their leg bounces. Hard to say if they like that feeling on their knee joint or if it's the actual foot hitting the ground that they need. So the sensory is the proprioceptive need for more pressure. And then the stim is what you see them do to meet that need, which is the bouncing of the leg or the tapping of the foot.
Oh, the need for more pressure when you bounce the leg. Oh, that's fascinating. I never knew that. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the Kade, since you know so much, on the sensory S, what is the percentage of overlap between like sensory integration disorder and autism, if you know?
There is a theory that perhaps folks who are diagnosed with sensory processing disorder are getting missed because they mask the social side. Because often those kids meet the sensory and the stimming piece, which are the 2 out of 4 that you need, but they're missing the social, which is required.
Okay.
So I don't have a great accurate number because I'm guessing whatever number exists right now is probably not that accurate.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So we've got social differences, which has to be there. We've got sensory, stimming. What's next?
I guess the other two are super fun. Special interest. Let's go there because that's a fun one. Special interests are something that I think it's a little over 90% of autistic folks, when surveyed, say that they do have. Some people call them passions or hyperfixations, but they are interests that like fundamentally shape us. For some, like if we think stereotypical, a lot of the time we're thinking math, dinosaurs, horses, animals in general, cats. It could be Pokemon. It could be video games. I see that a lot with my youth these days, is that it's a particular video game or book series. For many, it was Harry Potter, which has been so hard to give up with the author and how she's treating trans folks. Which I should say, too, if you're working with trans kids, they are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic. So I am always looking at my trans youth and my queer youth because they're twice as likely to be autistic as non-queer folks. Are they perhaps autistic? So these special interests are things that kind of shape us, that we could spend unlimited amounts of time doing, learning about, engaging in, talking about, or showing to others. And the cool thing is that with special interests and some of the research on meditation and flow states from the 80s, special interests actually get us into that mindset, that flow state. So if you are working with someone who's autistic, engaging in their special interest or allowing them to talk about it or bring in like a stuffed animal or something that represents it will almost be more useful than teaching them like mindful breathing techniques.
Okay, this is where they can really relax.
Yeah.
And we can join and build a good alliance with them in these areas. And we want to teach them how to enjoy these areas, but also come in and out of it, I imagine.
Yeah, because, sometimes these special interests, I guess I should phrase it this way. Many autistic folks, if they could, would just engage in their special interests because it's so regulating, so soothing, so interesting. Like ADHDers, autistic folks have like an interest-based nervous system and brain, so they are drawn to what interests them. So we want to be careful not to limit how much they can access their special interests and instead look at how can we incorporate those into the other tasks they need to get done. So if somebody is struggling with showering, for example, if they are into a certain musical, can we play the musical soundtrack while they're showering so they get to like sing along or listen to it while they're doing the task that has to get done for their safety and health?
Because the brain will be like lighting up with interest during a task that is not lighting up the brain. and so you learn to use one to help the other. Okay.
Yes. And in fact, like not only could that shower not be lighting up the brain, it could be sensory hell, depending on why they don't want to shower.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. That makes so much sense because I love a shower. So I have to remember not everybody does.
Yeah, some people might be all about that shower, and it's the getting out that's the hard part, going back to the other temperature and the dryness and yeah. So, special interest wise, though, if you notice you've got a kid who is always talking about something or always bringing in something, Five Nights at Freddy's is very popular with a lot of my clients. Video, like any video game, really. Book series, like I said, TV shows, movies. If they have a quote or a TV show reference for everything, a lot of my adults always have a Office quote or Parks and Rec quote.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
because they're so great.
right. I agree. But those things, that's something that we can notice that most people don't think twice about, because it is pretty common to have quotes that resonate with you, but it's the frequency at which we engage in those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Listeners, check out our book for children of any age. It's called A Jumble of Thoughts and a Tangle of Feelings. It's on Amazon.com. If you know a child out there who is having a tough time, but unable to put that distress into words, this book is your guide to helping them figure out what is going on. Whether you're an educator, a therapist, or a parent, we really think this will be a helpful guide for you.
Kade, as we're talking about special interests and that flow state that you're talking about, which everybody needs to have, I'm trying to compare this to co-burdening and attachment. So is it harder for someone with autism to get that sort of flow from connection versus from an activity like this?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. In fact, under the social piece, one of the other things I look for is how much someone enjoys what we call parallel play.
Mm-hmm.
So where the connection to others, if we saw it in a therapy session, we would go, we need to get them engaging with each other more. But for autistic folks, it's much more common to find that connection through being in the same physical space and doing your own separate thing.
Yeah. And just having that be okay in the relationship.
Yeah.
Or defining that as a way to connect and not have that be a threat relationally.
Yes. And the other thing that I like to do is help the guardians get invested in their kids' special interests.
Yeah.
Because then they'll start to see the world through if it's My Little Pony and there's a lesson around, I don't know, getting along with your sibling, us using that to help it inform our treatment plan is going to be so much more helpful than us saying, here's a social story about Joey and how he gets along with his sister now. That's not going to connect. So if the guardians can meet them and take joy or interest in those special interests, that's going to build attachment faster.
Mm-hmm. And again, put the two together, put their special interest together with whatever is the lesson or quote, the need that we want to help that youth with, and just put them together.
Yeah, I find that gets me so much further with supporting the clients and their goals and including some of the guardians' goals too, as long as it meets, as long as it's affirming.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the special interest piece. And I think that's one of the first things I notice about someone, because in my intake, I ask, what is something that brings you joy? What's something you could do all day, every day? And that's where I get to start hearing about it. My kid is always doing X, Y, Z. Or when they get upset, the only thing that calms them down is this. Those are some dead
because it's regulating. Special interests are regulating. God.
Yeah. Okay.
And I should say, we don't have to get into it a ton. There are some special interests that can be dysregulating because you can't pick what you're interested in. It just happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know some folks who grew up with World War II as a special interest, and that's a tricky one to explain to people without it sounding really bad, even if that's not the point of their interest or what brought them joy from it. Maybe it was more learning about the aircrafts or the strategy part. But, there are some special interests that are difficult to share with others and that they build shame around. But that's like a 201. We can get into that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting just to even know that, Kade. That's really interesting because the person who has that, say, World War II special interest, it's so much joy for them. Yeah. And then sharing that with somebody else gets a little tricky. How is the other person going to respond to me when I talk about World War II aircraft and strategy? are you going to join me in that conversation and in that special interest and passion I have, or am I going to feel you pull away or try to redirect me to something else that the other person thinks is okay or acceptable? And again, I'm using air quotes there. That's really good to know.
Which is, after we touch on the next of the S's, we could totally talk about what do you do in families where you're noticing the kid is autistic and
Yeah, let's do that.
Before we go to the fifth one, I just am dying to ask you this question. Can we ask you do you have a special interest?
I sure do. It's people.
Really?
Yeah. I just love, maybe you would guess, maybe not. I love watching reality TV shows. I love watching true crime. I've been reading self-help books since I was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
Getting into the brain and why people do what they do and how others respond to the dynamics at play.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That doesn't surprise me about you and all your long list of accomplishments in the field. That makes a lot of sense right now.
Yeah. It drives me to learn more, and then you end up with credentials along the way, even if you
might as well get them if you're interested in that, right?
Okay, what's number 5?
Yeah, that last one, I call it structure. The DSM, I believe, refers to it as rigidity. And it's not that we are all super rigid folks. Sometimes yes, but what it is more is that because our brains are processing on average 45% more than a non-autistic person's brain at any given time, it's chaotic. It feels intense. One little task can feel monumental, which is something I also hear from my kids, that it's just too hard to put my shoes and socks on, or it's just too hard to do this homework, even though they've already cut my assignment in half because of my accommodation. So the difficulty of things that other people would be like, well, that's just call the doctor and schedule your appointment, can feel overwhelming for some of us. So what it is more than rigidity is we have some expectation sensitivity. We need to know what to expect so that it's not so jarring. When I joined our call today and you said, we do about 10 minutes of talking about what we'll talk about. And then Rhonda came in and said, I'm going to introduce you and then you'll get to talk. So helpful. You both were so helpful without even knowing that is something that would help me. Because
Kade, without that, what is it like?
Without that, it feels like the rug is yanked out from under you, and the more that it happens, the harder it is. So I'll use us. When we originally scheduled, I think you had said, let's maybe talk about trans kids. Awesome. Great. Today I saw the email that said, I think we're talking about autistic kids. I'm like, okay, let me shift my brain. Luckily they go hand in hand and it's special interest. But
yeah.
But if I had shown up and you both were like, actually, can you talk about the devastation across the world and how that's impacting our kids? Okay, this is going to take me a minute to rearrange. And maybe I could have done it and pulled through and it would have been a good episode. But then later in the day, if I ordered lunch and they had delivered the wrong food, it just pushes us closer to a meltdown or a shutdown. Yeah.
Okay. That's so helpful to understand. Thank you.
Yeah. And with kids, usually what I hear from the guardians or the teachers are like, it was supposed to be a field trip day, but it was rainy and so we canceled. And the kid destroyed the classroom, threw a desk, wouldn't stop freaking out or crying, didn't want to do anything the rest of the day. We were supposed to pick our kid up for a dental appointment and he hates the dentist, but for some reason he's now upset that the appointment got canceled. Well, that poor kid probably for the last week has been prepping. I have to go to the dentist. It's going to be painful. It's going to be loud. I'm going to have to talk to strangers. I'm going to have to do all this. Now it's got to be rescheduled. I just prepped.
Right.
Yeah.
The nervous system is going through so much and then has the kind of dysregulating moment, then has to re-regulate again and still has to do the appointment.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Probably also had a plan for after the appointment on how they were going to relax. Well, at least I'll get to be home from school early so I can catch this cartoon, or I'll get a little extra video game time, or I won't have to do my homework because I won't get assigned it. I'll get pulled before homework, whatever it is. Usually they've already thought that far ahead. And so
Yeah, everything gets mixed. Okay, so I'm trying to think, Rhonda, how this shows up for us in EFFT. And sometimes in our family sessions, we might have caregivers or parents who are having a tough time with some of these kinds of behaviors, but haven't considered this diagnostic category. And it's leading to a lot of distress in the family. And I think the point I feel is, oh, I think I might be seeing something here, but I don't want to really be the one to surface that if I'm wrong, or if that's going to throw the family, or what does one do? How do we bring this up? How do we have these conversations in family sessions?
Usually I start to slowly introduce the concept of neurodiversity, that there is no one brain type and everyone has differing needs, differing ways they process things. Probably things you all are already describing in like attachment framework. Everyone's got different attachment styles, things that are more effective, less effective for each person. And just check in on their ableism. Are they like, well, but in this family, it is unacceptable that we don't all sit at the table and eat dinner, or it is unacceptable that you don't look me in my eyes when I'm talking to you, or it's unacceptable that you don't return grandpa's hug, or whatever it is.
How much like the guardians basing the family norms and rules on some expectation that the guardian is putting out there.
Yeah. Which usually we trace it, it's from their guardians, and then
right.
That's how they were raised. That's the thing, is that it's hard to sit witness to this kind of expectation. I think it jolts us as the therapist, and then we get curious about the parent and help me understand where this expectation comes from. This seems very important in your family, even though your child seems to have a very hard time doing this. So we can really get behind this and understand where the parent was taught this, and or get curious with the child about, why is that tough? What happens in your body? Describe to me. And that could really start to give us a feel for what's going on internally.
Yeah, absolutely. And often when I'm starting to explore the like, oh, I wonder why with the caregiver or guardian, then it becomes, well, because my parents expected X, Y, Z, and you think it was hard, or you think it was easy for me. You think I like doing this? No, but it's what our family does. Okay, how can we start to dismantle the shoulds? And how can we figure out what actually works for your family and what feels more collaborative? And no, it is rare that I've met a guardian who wants a fight every day, trying to push for these arbitrary rules and structures and guidelines. So usually we kind of move into a place where they are more open to, yeah, you're right. This doesn't work for me or my family. It really didn't work for me as a kid, usually. As some parents are like, it did work for me because I am that type of rule follower or
rule follower. So that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. But then we can kind of keep moving, like, let's dismantle some of the ableism, and then let's start exploring, what do we know about family mental health history? Tell me a little about the family. Often I'm hearing these criteria met in grandparents and extended family members. And what we need to know as therapists is that one study shows that it's as likely as, that if one parent is autistic, it's a 91% chance that their child will be. And that's only if one parent is autistic.
Yeah.
What we know about social communication, though, they used to say autistic people have a social communication deficit. They've done studies that show that that's actually not true. It's when we have a cross neurotype communication, it appears to be a deficit. So when we're talking to other autistic people, we have no more miscommunications than two non-autistic people communicating. It's when we try to talk to the non-autistic folks or the highly masked autistic folks who are acting neurotypical.
Right. Okay.
So I'm hearing this throughout their family history.
The family line. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I often see it with the guardians, so part of what I'm always very aware of is when I start to talk to them about what traits I'm seeing in their kids, they're going to get maybe a little sensitive, or they're going to go, oh, well, I do that. No, that's not autistic. We all do that. And that's where it becomes a little tricky too, to navigate well, it's actually genetic, that there's some misinformation that it's Tylenol vaccines, parenting style. No, we know it's genetic. We just can't pinpoint it in the DNA yet. So it is absolutely normal for your family. It is absolutely normal for an autistic family. How do we get them to come to a space where they're open to hearing that and maybe looking inside themselves? I also find, maybe this will take some pressure off of you both and the listeners. Usually when I bring it up, the guardian has already thought it about themselves or their kid. And pretty frequently, they have also said, but we asked the doctor and they said no. Or, well, we took them for an eval and they came back with these 3 diagnoses, but they're not autistic. And when I look at that eval and that write-up, they did meet, often, not always, they usually meet the ADOS-2 criteria for being autistic, but because they were pleasant to engage with or have friends, or my teens have dated before, or they want to date, the evaluator dismisses it. And it even happens locally for Rhonda and I. Like, I see these reports all the time in our area. And it's just because some of the testing tools are not built for modern day autistic narratives and this deep understanding from an autistic perspective.
Yeah.
So let me just double check myself. So Kate, are you saying that some of the currently used assessments for autism are not based on our current modern day understanding? So they're outdated?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
And in fact, when I screen,
maybe a smart person like you is going to fix that for the world. If you can bring us something better.
I think a lot of folks are switching from the ADOS-2 over to a testing assessment format called the MIGDAS, which is a little better. It's normed on more people than the ADOS-2. And the first ADOS was just primarily cisgender heterosexual white boys. So
okay, got it.
Branch out into different intersecting identities.
Sure.
They get misinterpreted and missed. Yeah.
Of course. Yes. And so the MIGDAS has a greater population it was researched from? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So if anyone wanted very specific training and formal assessment, I would go for the MIGDAS instead.
Okay.
But even what we're talking about here is good for just screening,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Could you give us some language about, just give us an example of how you might bring this up with a family? Opening the conversation, maybe, just in your words.
Yeah, it's tough because usually I've got their intake, so I know a little family mental health history. So I'm always looking for things like depression, anxiety, substance use. I'm always looking for what is this kid already diagnosed with and what's the presenting challenges that they're coming to me for. So I usually come armed with that information. And then I also have what I've observed, which, that is usually most poignant. And I like to use the caregiver's language. So if they have said, my kid freaks out when there's seams in their socks, they won't take a shower. When I pick them up from school, they freak out because they didn't know I was coming to get them. And then we can't go do the fun thing I planned. Whatever it is that are hitting these categories, the criteria. Mm-hmm. I usually do that session when I'm first introducing it with just the guardian or guardians, not the kid in the room yet. And I approach it, I'm curious, what do you know about autism? And I'll just put it out there because I feel like if we skirt around it too much, then it becomes a scary word. And it already has a lot of stigma. So usually when I say that, I will get one of 3 responses. One is, I don't know, never heard of that. What is that?
Okay.
Second one is, yeah, we've considered, we actually asked so-and-so if that might be, or this close friend told us that our kid might be autistic, some sort of like, we had an inkling.
Okay.
And the third one is absolutely not. So even just, what do you know about autism? Absolutely not. I bet you're going to say my kid's autistic. There's no way. No. And it could be, I work with autistic kids. I work in the gifted program and I see autistic kids and my kid is not. Or our relative so far removed was autistic and they were disabled and they couldn't do anything, and my kid is so capable. Like, just the myths start coming up and the stigma starts coming up.
Yeah. I think, I think for us, we might say the fears come up from our attachment-based framework is absolutely not. And there's a family history, person. There's a fear around what their life was like. And I don't want to see my child have a life like that. And it's very much uninformed. But it's shaped from their, personal experience and their family. So I think we might say the fears come up. And I really appreciate your lens of the stigma is there.
Yeah. Yeah, because the fear is usually more about, well, how are others going to treat my kid?
Right.
And
Will
what
they
does
be
this mean for their
accepted?
future? Yeah. Are they going to be successful then? Are they going to live with me forever?
Right.
Well, if you're saying they're autistic and they have those traits, well, my husband or my partner has those traits, what does that mean for all of us? You're saying it's genetic. Well, then, I used to do that as a kid.
And
All those.
then the problem in air quotes again gets bigger.
Yeah. Because
when really like the family can resource each other. Like if we're having similar experiences, then great. We can all learn together. We can grow together. We can all co-create the kind of collaborative family environment and dynamic that we all want. And as I put my hand to my heart here, like that feels good to me. Like,
Yes, because truly in the families who are open to hearing this and are ready to embrace or move forward with this knowledge, it can be revolutionary for the family system.
Absolutely.
Like, it's a whole new way of interacting with each other and a whole new way of understanding each other if people are open to it and can move into that space. But definitely sometimes it's the fear and the absolutely not, and the we're going to find a new therapist who doesn't talk like that, or okay, we can acknowledge it, but don't you dare tell my child.
Oh, that sounds like the next podcast to have you come back for, Kade.
Yes, I would love to. Yeah, it's there's so much to it because there's some people who still say like someone has autism as if it's something they're carrying around they could get rid of. There's still such a push for a cure. That's a lot of the rhetoric right now is autism is, there's this old, I think it's an Autism Speaks ad that says, autism is in your walls. I'm the creepy autism that's like out to get you and your family. And it sounds so scary.
Yeah.
But then if you go to your library's Lego club and you see those kids hanging out and having fun and engaging in their special interests, it's not scary. What is scary is the lack of resources we have for autistic people.
Sure.
But autism itself is not the scary part. So, so I know we only cover kind of the basics here, but that's what I'm usually looking for. And I bring it up as gently as I can, but directly. Because I don't want to add to the fear. I don't want them to feel like they can't say the R slur if that's what they know about autism is it means you're that, whatever they need to say, let's get it out here in front of me instead of in front of the kid. And let's gently start to provide correct psychoeducation.
Sure. So let me just recap what you've just shared with us in these last few minutes here. When it comes to bringing up the conversation, you're like, I already have the intake. I already have family mental health history. I have my own observations when I'm with the child. That might be a couple sessions down the road, but that would happen. You have I'll call it the collateral report from the guardian, what the guardian has already stories and experiences relaying to you. Clinical language, you might call that symptoms and behaviors, right? But that collateral experience report from the guardian. In the first session, you're more likely to have just the guardian in the room. And you're going to bring it up really directly, but also indirectly, maybe first as like a toe in the water of what do you know about autism? And I love how you can give us like kind of the three almost expected, again, air quotes, the three most common responses are, I don't know. Don't know anything about autism. Or, yeah, we kind of had an inkling. And then absolutely not. And then it sounds like we need to have you come back for another podcast episode to talk about what if it's absolutely not. And then you gave the other one, which was kind of a derivative of that. And now I'm already blanking out on what that was. It's something about, we just said it a few minutes ago. But I think we'd love to have you come back, Kade. I think you are such a gem and a treasure and a wealth of, honestly, not just knowledge, love.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm passionate about people, and especially autistic folks. I think I would love to come back. I do give trainings too. So if anyone is like, I need a deep dive on this right away, they can find me at my training platform is at cryptidlearns.com.
And we're going to put that in our podcast notes to make sure that we get that nice link for you there. Perfect. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, thank you both for having me on. This was enjoyable, and I hope it's some good info for other folks. And people are welcome to use me as a case study. If you rewind to the very beginning, notice how much I'm stammering and stuttering and like struggling to get the words out there. And as we went more and more regulated, the more we talked special interest and the more I got to see your communication styles.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to listen to this. I did not clock that. I was probably focused on me being nervous. Well, thank you so much, Kade. We're going to get your website and your training websites and any contact information you want. We're going to put that in these podcast notes. And we'd love to have you come back. We're kind of already booked for the rest of the year, which is nice to be able to say. So maybe we'll be able to have you come back in January.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's it for today, folks. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again for our next journey.